Welcome back. The president says that North Korea went ahead and developed nuclear weapons because previous American administrations were not determined enough to stop it. But the big question now is, which side is bluffing? Will the president go to war with a nuclear-armed North Korea, or will Kim Jong-un fire first? The third option, that one of them will back down, is the only one that avoids an all-out war. So the fact is that nuclear war is a possible outcome of this crisis. That idea, which was completely unthinkable just a few months ago, is hard to take in. So for some perspective, I turn to the man who hired me many years ago to work at NBC News, the legendary Tom Brokaw.
August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m.
When the United States dropped Little Boy on Hiroshima, Japan, the first atomic bomb used in warfare, and Fat Man 3 days later on Nagasaki, it was the beginning of the nuclear age, an age of such potential destruction it could end life on Earth. Our principal enemy, the Soviet Union, soon had its own nuclear arsenal. And I was one of the American school children diving under desks in a foolish belief that we could survive a Russian attack. As a political science student, I was immersed in the great issue and debates of my generation. Would the United States and Kremlin rivalry lead to a war to end all wars? A 1954 NBC documentary, ominously titled 3, 2, 1, 0, was primetime viewing. The idea that the world would end was not an apocalyptic absurdity. Yet, for all of the fear, no one dared to go nuclear. An uneasy truce settled across the world. Not peace exactly, but a kind of standoff between the Cold War superpowers. It was summed up in the phrase mutually assured destruction. If either side started a war, both would disappear. But for other countries, the temptation to be part of the nuclear club was too great. And in an age of suicide bombers and unstable despots, the idea of mutually assured destruction may no longer keep the handcuffs on. Following World War II, as the nuclear age was getting underway, the United States was involved in a war in Korea, although they called it a police action. 64 years ago, there was a ceasefire. The Korean Peninsula was divided between the North and the South. No one could have known then that today, North Korea would be a major and dangerous nuclear power. Nuclear weapons have spread across the world, large nations and small, China and Europe, Israel, but also Pakistan, India, and of course, North Korea. A bizarre renegade nation led by a megalomaniacal dictator who plays by no rules except his own. He has developed a sophisticated nuclear delivery system. Will he use it? David Wright is with the Union of Concerned Scientists, a group of experts dedicated to monitoring the perils of the nuclear age.
I started watching the missile program of North Korea back in the early 90s. I've been trying to get people to pay attention to this since then and to really put a lid on it.
What caused all this proliferation? How did that happen?
Other countries start to think, well, what do we need and what are the threats out there and what can we do about them? And that urge is very strong.
What worries Wright and his fellow scientists is that with all of these nukes, what about an accidental launch?
The President of the United States has sole authority to order the launch of nuclear weapons, and nobody in the command system can legally stop that.
It is not just President Trump. How do we develop a fail-safe system so no one person has that authority anywhere? If that nuclear chain begins to go off, no schoolboy desks will be much help in protecting millions of people.
This is one of those surreal moments we get a lot of in Seoul these days. Tom was just laying out the dangers of nuclear warfare, and behind me are dancers in traditional clothing. They've come out for a daily ceremony, and they seem to have an audience. It's a beautiful day here in Seoul, and nothing seems further away than a war. Let's hope it stays that way. Next, we find out that there's far more to North Korea's military machine than rockets and bombs. In a conventional fight, there's no doubt that Americans will own the airspace. But what happens if the fight moves to cyberspace?
On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put the threat level from North Korea?
Definitely somewhere between 8 and 10.
Are we ready for a new kind of war where the front line is actually online? Stay with us.